Shabbat Shalom. A special welcome to Nora Levy and to her family. Tomorrow morning we celebrate her bat mitzvah at our Shabbat morning service. As always, a welcome to all of you joining from home on this Shabbat and holiday weekend. Just a few weeks ago, I happened to be in Texas. Debbie had a convention in San Antonio, and then we went to visit one of the most remote and magnificent national parks in our country called Big Bend National Park. On the way back from Big Bend to San Antonio, we took the alternative route that takes you through a variety of small towns in southern Texas. We came to a town called Uvalde. And I remarked to Debbie, I remember remarking to her, what a pretty little town. It was a throwback kind of town with a main street that looked to be out of the 50s or 60s. And I remember mentioning to Debbie, I said, it's a shame that the railroad tracks run right through the main town. It mars it a little bit, but this looks like a nice town. And then we continued on our way to San Antonio. My heart is full of so many emotions this evening. I can't get the images of those young children out of my head, the 19 children and 2 of their teachers that were gunned down. This, in one respect, is a somber weekend in the sense that it is also Memorial Day. But this latest tragedy cast a pall over that. Nevertheless, part of the other emotion is that this week is a epic anniversary in the history of American Judaism and Reform Judaism in particular, because this coming week is the 50th anniversary of the ordination of the first female rabbi. So we plan on celebrating that fact this evening in 2 ways. The first is that, only with an exception or 2, all of the composers of music this evening are modern female composers. Debbie Friedman, of course, Rochelle Nelson, Lisa Levine, Nurit Hirsch, and so forth. So that's one way to honor this anniversary. I'll also be devoting some remarks about Sally Presand, who I know personally, and I'm friendly with, and the Cantor has a specially composed song for this occasion as well. We're not going to let that anniversary, 50th anniversary of the ordination, go unmarked. So with that, we're going to ask Nora and her mother Dina and brother Seth to come forward for the blessing of the Shabbat candles. We turn in our prayer book to page 3. And let's first read in English. Come on up to help lead us. Reading together, O source of light and truth, creator of the eternal law of goodness, help us to find knowledge by which to live. Lead us to take the words we shall speak into our hearts and our lives. Bless all who enter this sanctuary in need, all who bring the offering of their hearts. May our worship lead us to acts of kindness, peace, and love. Asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik shel Shabbat. Our welcome of Shabbat continues with the singing of Lecha Dodi, page 24. Page 20.
Little
as first we rise and face the entrance to the synagogue to dramatize our welcome, the bottom of page 21. We remain standing for our call to worship, the Baruch Hu, page 28.
Nora, would you like to join us?
Please be seated and join with Nora, stay here, in the Shema and the V'ahavta, page 34. Facing.
Baruch Shem.
Shema.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem, Kevod Malchuto, Le'olam Va'ed. Ve'avta et Adonai Elohecha, bechol levacha ubechol nafshecha ubechol meodecha, v'chayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi metzavecha hayom al levavecha ben shinatam levanecha v'dibarta ba'am בשיטתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם לאות על ידיך והיו לכתובות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
Is next, stay right here. Our Song of Liberation, Mi Chamocha, on page 40, set to the Debbie Friedman melody. Nora and the Cantor will lead us together. It was really at about the same time, in the beginning of the 1970s, that two women shook up the Jewish world. Sally Priesand becoming the first rabbi, but the other person was Debbie Friedman, the young composer, singer, songwriter, who really took the Jewish summer camp environment by storm with her new folk popular music and became an inspiration. So it was really Sally and Debbie in the early 1970s who made such an impression. And the Cantor told me that she kind of discovered a Debbie Friedman melody that we really don't know, a lesser melody, to the next prayer, to the Hashkivenu prayer on page 42. Baruch atah Adonai hapores sukat shalom aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael ve'al Yerushalayim. Our next prayer and melody on page 44 was not written by a woman, but we're keeping it in. Why? Because it's Nora's favorite from the Shabbat evening service, Vishamru, page 44. tefillah, the Amidah prayer that links our faith with the faith of our ancestors. Page 46, please rise. Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, ואלוהי לאה, האל הגדול, הגיבור והנורא, אל עליון, גומר חסדים טובים, וקונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לבני לבניהם, למען שמו ואהבה. מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם ועזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיה הכל אתה רב להושיע, מוריד הטל, מחלקל חיים בחסד, מחיה הכל ברחמים רבים, צומח נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר, מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומדום מלך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה להחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיה הכל. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלה. ברוך אתה אדוני, האל הקדוש. Please be seated. On page 55, may these hours of rest and renewal open our hearts to joy and our minds to truth. May all who struggle find rest on this day. May all who suffer find solace. May all who hurt find healing on this day. May all who despair find purpose. May all who hunger find fulfillment on this day, and may this day fulfill its promise. Baruch atah Adonai Mikadesh HaShabbat. This section of prayer ends with the prayer of peace, Shalom Rav. We usually sing it in the Hebrew, but the beautiful English translation on page 61 express sentiments that are so appropriate on this Shabbat when we have experienced another national tragedy and when we also gather to commemorate those who have fallen for our country. And the Cantor, I think it was last year, knowing how much this prayer means to me because it's part of the original Reformed prayer book that we grew up with, she set these English words to music. Now, at the end of the Amidah, our thoughts turn to those in need of healing. All those in need of healing that are within our families, but also the nation as a whole. For all those in need of healing of body or soul, we join together in our healing prayer, the Mishaberach prayer. The very last Torah portion in the book of Leviticus, which is where we have arrived on this Shabbat, begins in a positive way, but it does not end in a positive way. It begins by recounting the blessings that will come to our life if we make the right choices. But it ends by talking about the curses and all the detriments that will bring to our lives and to our society if we make the wrong choices. The Torah was very aware of human behavior and that we always can move toward the right or to the wrong. Matter of fact, the last verses in the book of Leviticus, called the Tochecha, the rebuke, are so severe that traditionally they're chanted in a whisper because they're so difficult to hear and to think about. So the only verses in the Torah where by tradition you chant them in a whisper. Fortunately, tomorrow morning, Nora's chanting from the first part of the Torah portion, the more positive part. But we pause now for a moment of our own silent prayer and reflection, thinking about how maybe we can transform something of our own that's maybe going in the wrong direction to the right direction. We pause. On June 3rd, 1972, Sally Presand was ordained as a rabbi, becoming the first female rabbi in 3,500 years of Jewish tradition to be ordained as such. Sally is now retired. She served a congregation here in New Jersey, in central New Jersey, for many, many years. She's a friendly person. She offered a blurb for my book, Path of the Prophets, when it came out. And this afternoon, one of our members emailed me and said, I remember that time very, very well, Muriel Reed. And she said, I remember reading a story that Sally was ordained as a rabbi, and shortly thereafter, she was in the supermarket shopping, and a congregant came up and said, "You mean the rabbi does their own shopping?" To which she replied, "But God delivers." It's very cute. I like that story. I had not heard that story before. But every person's accomplishment, and this was an epic accomplishment. When you think about what's going to be remembered about American Jewish history and American Judaism, one of the great diaspora communities, this has got to be up there in the top 10, maybe even in the top 5, because it changed Jews and Judaism forever and has been such an inspiration. So there's no doubt about it, but every accomplishment, as they say, you stand on the shoulders of those who came before you in some way. Now, Sally was the first, but I actually want to pay tribute to her by paying tribute to some of her predecessors or those who inspired her to take that final step. And actually, it really begins with the forming of the Reform movement in Germany in the middle of the 19th century. Listen to this quote. This is from the fathers of Reform Judaism. And they were fathers because there were no women involved in leadership positions at that time. But Abraham Geiger, who's considered the founding figure of Reform Judaism, this is what he said in 1837. He said, quote, "Let there now be no distinction between the duties of men and women, no assumption of the spiritual inferiority of women, as though they were incapable of grasping the deep things of religion. No institution of the public service, either in form or content, which shuts the doors of the temple in the face of women." That's a remarkable statement coming from the leading leader of the new movement called Reform Judaism in Germany in 1837. And 9 years later, a meeting of the first German Reform rabbis in Breslau, Germany, the group declared, quote, "It is a sacred duty to express most emphatically the complete religious equality of the female sex." This was path-breaking, this was wonderful, but why did it take more than a century and a quarter after those lofty words for anything to happen? Well, there were some small but important steps that did happen. And I want to pay tribute to 3 women in particular. The first, very dear to my heart, was Henrietta Zold. Henrietta Zold, the daughter of a well-known Baltimore rabbi, studied with her father, was a brilliant woman, and could have been a rabbi, except this was the early 1900s. Her first job for over 20 years was as the first editor of the Jewish Publication Society in Philadelphia, the organization that I lead to this day. Without Henrietta Zold, there would be no JPS as we know it. You probably know the name because after Henrietta Zold left JPS, which is a long story, she founded an organization called Hadassah. Here's the recent issue of Hadassah magazine with Sally Priesand in 1972. But Henrietta Zold went on to found not only Hadassah, she then made Aliyah to Israel and founded Youth Aliyah as well. If you go down to the Museum of American Jewish History in Philadelphia, and they have the Pantheon of American Jewish Pioneers in the main hall, Henrietta Zold is there, and she deserves to be there. The second individual that you have not heard of, I barely had heard of this, was a woman named Martha Newmark. In 1921, she applied to the Hebrew Union College to study in the rabbinical program. A debate ensued among the faculty. 1921, the faculty of Hebrew Union College in Cincinnati agreed to accept her. Then they were overruled by the Board of Trustees, who said, we're not ready for this, despite the history of equality that I just told you about. So Martha and one or two other women completed studies but did not receive rabbinical ordination. But the precedent had been set 1 year later in 1922 by the faculty, who said there's no reason to deny women ordination. This is 1922. Oh, and by the way, in New York, a woman named Judith Eisenstein that year became the first modern bat mitzvah and set the path for women having a bat mitzvah ceremony just like men, boys, at age 13. Well, if you do the math, it would take another 50 years for even the Reform Institution, Hebrew Union College, my alma mater, to come around to the official ordination of women. I do want to mention, I said 3 women. In Europe, in Germany, a woman named Regina Jonas in 1935 did receive rabbinical organization, but privately. In the traditional world to this day, rabbis ordain other rabbis privately. So not by a school, not by a seminary. She received private ordination. It was not recognized by any institution. Sadly, Regina Jonas perished in Auschwitz during the Holocaust. But without the trailblazing Henrietta Zold, Martha Newmark, and Regina Jonas, Sally Priesand could not have come along to request ordination and receive it in 1972. I'll just add a postscript. More than 1,500 women since then have been ordained by the Reform movement, then the Reconstructionist movement, then in the early 1980s, the Conservative movement. And even in New York, there is an institution today called Yeshivat Maharat, which has begun ordaining modern Orthodox Jewish women, although that ordination is not recognized by the movement per se. More than 850 of those 1,500 have been ordained by the Hebrew Union College, Jewish Institute of Religion. I'm proud to say that 70% of the women ordained by the Reform movement serve in congregations around the country, and 50% of those ordained in the conservative movement. And so I'll end by saying it's been 50 years. There's now a whole generation, more than that, 2 generations of young people who have grown up where it's the most natural thing in the world that a woman is a cantor, or a rabbi, or a synagogue president, or the head of a religious school. I think that that vision of Reform Judaism laid out so long ago by the founders has come to fruition. In other words, it's second nature. Female rabbi, female cantor, no big deal anymore. Matter of fact, more than 50% of the rabbinical school and even a higher percentage of the Cantor school, I would estimate, to be honest, maybe 70 or 80% are females to this day. That does not mean that the task of true equality and true parity is complete, but it is cause for separation. Look how far we've come in 50 years. It's really a cause to cheer and to celebrate. And so I'm going to ask the cantor to read the words of her song first so you can appreciate. I understand that the cantor wrote this song for Rabbi Prisan and her celebration at HUC's Founders Day this year of 2022.
True, and fortunately, where I grew up in Israel, I did not know that being a female cantor is okay or possible at all. I just knew that phrase, Kol Ba'isha Erva, which in Orthodoxy symbolizes preventing from women to being heard by men, or preventing them from taking leading positions or from stating their opinions. And in this song that is called Kol Ba'isha, literally means the voice within the woman, it is breaking that status quo, raising the woman's voice to be heard, now more than ever. And the lyrics are, you have the free will to be what you believe. You have the power to bring relief. Just take a big breath, rise up, and raise your voice. You have kol. You have a kol. Sound it out. Own your past and be your present. And make your future be a Torah. You have a voice. You have a choice. Make your life a sacred text. You have the knowledge to lead the way. You have compassion to help come what may, and just a leap of faith to soar, to shine who you are. You are Kol. Own your past and be your present, and make your future be a Torah. the sacred text.
As we open the Ark now for the concluding Aleinu prayer, we turn to the bottom of page 282. Please rise. Nora, come lead us.
לתת גדולה ויוצר ראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא. שהוא נטע שמיים ויוסר הארץ, ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו בגובי מרומים. הוא אלוהינו אין אור, אין בית מלכנו אפס זולתו, ככתוב בתורתו, וידעת היום והשבות אל לבביך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים בשמיים ממעל, ועל הארץ מתחת אין עוד. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו
As we remain standing, our thoughts now turn to those of our loved ones recently taken from our midst during the past 30 days. Avraham Shalush, father of Lee Shalush. On this Shabbat, the Yortzeit, the anniversary of the passing of Pearl Kaminsky, sister of Cheryl Alikio, Miriam Fishbein, mother of Michael Fishbein. On this Shabbat, we think of the 19 children and 2 teachers who tragically lost their life this week. And on this Shabbat, we especially remember all those who have made the ultimate sacrifice in defense of our country on this Memorial Day weekend. For all those, and for all those whom there may be no one to say Kaddish, we join in the Kaddish prayer on page 294. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbi, be'alama divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'hayechon uvyomechon uv'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael, ba'agala uv'zman kariv v'emru Amen. Yehe shmei Rabba mevorach leolam olamei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitroman v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei d'kudesha b'richu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbachata v'nechamata da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shamaya v'hayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom bimramav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May the source of peace and peace to all who mourn and comfort to all who are bereaved. Amen. Please be seated. There's just one announcement, and that is tomorrow morning at our Shabbat morning service, Nora Levy celebrates her becoming a bat mitzvah. We will conclude our service this evening with those well-known words with which we just ended the Kaddish. May the one who makes peace above bring peace to all of us. We're always in need of peace, but in certain times when our hearts are torn, we think even more. And this is an Israeli melody by Nurit Hirsch, celebrating one of the great composers in Israel.
Not Sinai. People think that it was there forever and it's a nusach. No, that's a contemporary woman's song.
Shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu, ve'imru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, Shabbat Shalom.